So good afternoon, everybody. We are now at agenda item 12, which is SDNP-9-05173-FUL. Amended plans were received on the 31st of July 2020. It's the erection of a single detached dwelling at the Old Bank, High Street, West Meon. And the case officer is Lisa Booth. Good afternoon, Lisa.
Afternoon, Chairman.
And when you're ready, we look forward to hearing your presentation. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to quickly draw your attention to the update sheet, which I provided some clarification on certain points for you. Go to the presentation. I'm just waiting for the presentation to come up. Okay, so the Old Bank is a semi-detached two-storey dwelling located within the settlement and conservation area of West Meon, which lies within South Downs National Park. The principle of new dwellings in the settlement is generally supported by local plan policy. The rear garden of the Old Bank, which you can see outlined in red on this plan here, slopes down to the tree-lined River Meon tributary. And it's sort of an owl-shaped garden and sits to the south of the Old Chapel and White Horse Cottage, and the saddlery is to the west. There's an existing access drive to the east side of the Old Bank, which runs down to Hard Standing. Just an aerial map. There we go. Oh, I have to go back. No, I need to go. That's it. No. That one. Sorry. The proposal is for a 3-bedroomed L-shaped design dwelling utilising the existing slope of the land. A single-storey element is proposed on the higher part of the land, and a 2-storey element will start 7.6 metres from the rear boundary on lower level land. It will be built using hardwood weatherboarding and slate roof. Garden areas will be to the front, side and rear of the property, and parking for 2 cars to the front for the proposed house and 3 car parking spaces for the Old Bank, and there's a 7-metre wide turning area to allow the cars to go in and out in a forward gear. If we go back to the main plan here, just to show you the development within West Meon. The village of West Meon is one of fairly dense development within its centre. There's no set building lines or spatial characteristics per se. You can see from the site location plan that the centre of West Meon does not have a set building line. There are other examples of built development close to the River Meon to the east of the site. For example, at Brook Lodge, Whedon Cottage, the Old Garage and Orchard Cottage. And these are things like there's ancillary residential accommodation and garages. Views through to the site are limited from the high street due to the juxtaposition of the houses along the high street and the land to the rear of the houses dropping away towards the river. The proposal is not considered to be visually detrimental to the character of the area or street scene. Views of the trees beyond will still be maintained. The siting of the dwelling in the plot has been informed by the location of the River Meon tributary and the requirement for a 5-metre riparian buffer. The riparian buffer will be planted with additional relevant landscaping. The inclusion of the riparian buffer will also ensure that there is space around the building and that a buffer remains between the dwelling and the River Meon. Concern has been raised by the impact of the development on amenities of a number of dwellings around the site. The proposed dwelling has been significantly reduced in height and size from that originally submitted. You can see the outline on the elevations from the previous, the original submission to how it's been amended now. It will be built into the slope of the land with a single-storey element closest to the boundary with the walls of the nearest neighbouring properties. The neighbours at the Old Chapel and White Horse Cottage are the most affected by the proposal in terms of outlook. A single storey element will be between 1.8 metres and 2.4 metres from the rear boundary wall of White Horse Cottage, and there is a distance of approximately 27 metres between the two dwellings. The Old Chapel will have an oblique view of the dwelling, with views maintained somewhat through to the trees along the riverbank. There is 18 metres between the Old Chapel and the two-storey element of the proposed dwelling. The distances between the neighbouring properties and the proposal are considered reasonable. Windows to the north serve en-suites and will be obscure glass, and there will be a distance of 20 metres from the first floor bedroom window looking west towards the rear of the Saddleries garden. It's understood why neighbours object to the changes brought about by the proposal, but an assessment has to be made on the harm that would arise from the development. A balanced approach has been taken, and it is not considered that the proposal would result in a detrimental harm to the outlook overlooking the amenities of the neighbouring properties, and is detailed further in the report. In regards to highways, there were some concerns about highways. We go back to this plan, I've marked on some measurements. I'm not sure if you can see them or not. Hampshire County Council Highways has not objected to the proposal, subject to conditions. The requisite number of parking spaces has been provided for each household, so 3 for Bank House and 2 for the new dwelling, and turning has been provided. Objections relate to construction vehicles not being able to access the site to upload materials. This is a matter that really has to be dealt with by the applicants in order to carry out the development, and any breaches in highway safety would be dealt with by either the police or the local highway authority under highway legislation. However, as requested within the parish council's representation and recommended by Hampshire County Council Highways, a condition has been applied requiring details of the submitted provisions to be made for the parking and turning on site operative and construction vehicles during the period of development, which is condition 6. I'll just take you through some photographs. So this is the site looking west towards the end of the garden of the old bank. It's a bit hard standing here, and then the level drop down. Okay, oh, sorry, another one just looking west. This is a bit of an older photo. The shed's obviously gone, and there's the real boundary walls of, I think that's the White Horse Cottage. That's looking east. And to the east. This is the rear boundary walls. So that's White Horse Cottage, and that's the Old Chapel, the pink dwelling. So this is looking from the boundary wall of from White Horse Cottage right at the end, sort of hanging over the boundary wall. Again, this is further back at White Horse Cottage Garden. Okay. So this is from the Old Chapel Garden, so again, right up by the wall. This is from the ground floor bedroom window of the Old Chapel. From the end of the garden, from the saddlery, overlooking the site. And this is from saddlery first floor window. It's from the Old Bank Conservatory. Oh, this is the access down. You can see this van there. There's walkway between. This is the overhang. Again, further and down towards site. Again, you can see the overhang and the gap down to the hard standing. And the driveway in the turning area that will be. And the Old Bank's garden area is beyond this wire fencing here. Thank you, Chairman. The dwelling as proposed, along with the recommended conditions, will ensure that it is appropriately sited to avoid harmful impacts on the character and appearance of the South Downs National Park and the West Meon Conservation Area. The development would not result in a detrimental impact on the amenities of neighbouring properties in terms of loss of privacy, light or overbearing impacts, or affect the ecology or biodiversity. For the reasons outlined above, the application is therefore recommended for approval subject to the conditions outlined in the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Lisa. So we'll move into the public participation. The first public speaker is Neil March from the Southern Planning Practice, who is speaking on behalf of Ingrid Sparshot and other neighbours. So good afternoon, Neil.
Good afternoon.
And you have 3 minutes, and when you're ready, off you go. Okay.
Good afternoon. I've been asked to speak on behalf of a number of local residents who are all gravely concerned about this application, including the owners of the Old Methodist Chapel, White Horse Cottage and the Saddlery. The proposal involves development of a back garden site in a sensitive location immediately adjacent to the River Meon. The development will be very close to the riverbank, which is a biodiverse wildlife corridor that provides an important habitat for a wide range of creatures, flying, nesting, travelling by land or water, foraging and feeding. This includes otters and water voles, both of which have been reintroduced to the River Meon in recent years. Otters have been recorded by SDMP nearby, as well as protected species of bats, songbirds and small mammals. The ecological importance of the riverbank as a wildlife corridor and as important and irreplaceable dark habitat cannot be underestimated. This was the conclusion of the ecology report prepared by the residents' own ecology consultant, who visited the site and walked along the corridor in June 2020, whereas WCC Ecology visited in February 2020 when the site was under the cover of leaves and the river was in flood. The report by Peach Ecology advises that the River Meon is an intrinsically dark habitat which is declining at an alarming rate and should therefore be considered as irreplaceable. As such, the provisions of section 175 of the MPPF apply, which state that proposals which would result in the loss or deterioration of irreplaceable habitat should be refused. The height of the trees that line the river to the south of the proposed dwelling means that the site will almost be permanently in the shade for a large part of the year. As a consequence, the lights inside the dwelling will need to be on during the day as well as at night, which will illuminate the area and therefore impact on the dark habitat and the wide range of animals that depend upon it. To protect the wildlife corridor, a low planted 5-metre riparian buffer is proposed. This covers almost the entire garden area to the south of the dwelling, where there are full height, fully glazed bifold doors, and is where the main downstairs living area is located. Future occupants will therefore surely want to maximise the use of this part of their garden that backs onto the river, and as a result will be constantly under pressure to be domesticated, maybe not straight away, but at some time in the future. Access to the new dwelling will be via the existing single width driveway that runs in between Old Bank and the Old Methodist Chapel. The driveway has a pinch point and an overhang, which means that only low-sided vehicles, such as cars or small vans, can access the rear of the property. Any high-sided vehicles will either have to park at the top of the drive and therefore block the driveway, or in the road, which has the potential to cause a highway hazard on what is a busy road in the centre of the village and is therefore a very real concern to residents. The intensification of the use of the driveway will also have an adverse impact on the Old Methodist Chapel, which is an upside-down property with sleeping accommodation on the ground floor and its side living windows only 1 metre from the driveway. The large first-floor windows on the western elevation that will serve the master bedroom of the new dwelling will give 180-degree views over the gardens of the Saddlery and the Old Methodist Chapel, leading to an unacceptable loss of privacy. Residents ask that a site visit is arranged prior to any decision being made. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, perfectly on time. Thank you. And so questions for Mr. March?
Chair, could I ask that Councillor Godden-Smith turn off his microphone?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Could I start the questions while we're waiting for people to indicate theirs? There are, as Lisa pointed out, there are other properties, not in our map in our report, but Brook Lodge was one of them, which are also on the bank of the river. Are you familiar with those? Or?
I'm not actually. I've only been able to visit the applicants, the neighbours' property. They don't extend as far down as there.
Thank you. Vice Chair, any questions for Mr. March?
Yes, we have a question from Councillor McLean. Could I also mention, Chair, there is a distracting buzz in the background. I don't know if it's in the office, the main microphone there, but it's definitely a microphone with a buzz distracting the sound, making it more difficult to hear.
Yeah, I can hear the buzz. It might be Mr. March. We'll see when he turns his microphone off.
But we have a question from Councillor McLean, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor McLean. Anyway.
Thank you, Councillor Rutter. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor McLean.
On the river, and there being, having seen some of the letters that were sent in, being different responses to the one that was done by the applicant and the one that was done by the residents, and also the South Downs National Park. There seems to be a limited number of sort of responses to it, particularly the Dark Skies Ranger, who doesn't seem to have had any comment at all. I wonder if you could just fill in some of the blanks for me. Thank you. And I can't hear a buzz.
Sorry, I didn't quite capture the first bit of the question.
No, the first thing that you said, Councillor McLean, was missing. I don't know why. Could you just repeat the beginning?
I'll try again. It must be that buzz. It was about the reports that were done by the applicant, and also the comments put in one of the letters from one of the objectors about the report by the applicant being done in February during the rainstorms, and the one that you guys did, the objectors did, that came up with different answers. And I wonder if you could fill that out for me. Did you get that one okay?
Yes, I did. Yes, I understand. No, the point we're making is that the ecology report that was instructed by the residents that I represent, the consultant undertook his site visit in June 2020 this year, when obviously a lot of the trees were in leaf, the wildlife were fully active, whereas the point the residents make is that the WCC Ecology visited the site in February 2020, where the site was covered in leaves and the rivers were in flood. So they feel that they didn't really get the full impression of what the site is like, probably during the summer months, than in the sort of quieter times of the year.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair, any more?
Sorry, there was the bit about the Dark Skies Ranges and the South Downs Natural Park contribution.
Well, there is a condition, I believe, about the dark skies, but I think, Mr. March, the point you were making was that because of the tree cover, lights would have to be on earlier than normal.
Yes, yeah, that's the point with the the site is, for a large part of the year, will be permanently in the shade, so hence there will need to be internal lighting, which will illuminate this dark habitat area.
Thank you.
The lighting is a condition, it is a heading anyway, Councillor.
I have seen that, but I just wanted an explanation.
So we'll look at that then. Vice Chair, any more questions for?
No more questions for Mr. March.
Thank you very much, Mr. March, for coming along. If you could turn your camera and your microphone off, but obviously you will be staying with us for the rest of the application. Thank you. Right. So no one from the Parish Council, so we now move on to the Ward Councillor, Councillor Hugh Lumby. Good afternoon, Councillor Lumby.
Afternoon, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and if you'd like to put your camera on, then we can.
Yes.
As well.
The only thing on the camera, hope that's come through, is I'm currently sitting in a service station near Reading. I've just been to a funeral and I'm just on my way home. And I'm we're piping this through my phone, so I'm not sure whether the signal will be that good. Right. But we can give it a go with the camera on. Let's see how we do, or we can.
It's up to you. We don't really mind. We can't see a lot of you. We can only see half your face. But anyway, whichever you choose.
That's obviously the improvement. Anyway.
When you're ready, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Chair. I will turn the camera off if that's okay, because I'm not sort of clumsy with hands. Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you everybody for the opportunity to address the committee this afternoon. And thank you, Lisa, for the introduction and also the time you've spent talking to me about all of this. Obviously, an apology for also phoning from this lay-by. On the applications, as you'll see from the papers, I'm afraid I have serious issues with this application. Some more detail to follow, but I really think that this is one where it is better to understand the concerns from a site visit. I will request this again at the end, but I honestly think members would understand why the neighbours are so upset were they to visit the site and see for themselves the impact it's happening and the various issues. And to be clear, the neighbours are really upset. I've met a lot of affected parties, and I can talk about Lodge later if you want to. One emailed me this week saying, and I quote, "The whole process has had a very detrimental effect on us all. The worry, total loss of privacy in my case, and also the dramatic loss of value to my own and neighbours' houses. My first major worry here relates to the access. The A32 runs through West Meon and is a busy road. The development will access onto the A32 right on a difficult corner and very near other junctions. It's a dangerous spot with cars, pedestrians, bikes, lorries, others with prams and so on coming from all angles. Adding more traffic here and joining in at this corner is a concern. The new drive itself is only wide enough because the applicants have taken down part of their house at ground floor level to create the width, and we saw that. Higher vehicles cannot get through because of the overhang at first floor level. That van we saw on the photograph, for example, could not have got any further down the line, and we were sent photographs in this week that showed the same problem. Given that width and access issues, there are major issues to how construction will take place and how emergency and other vehicles can access the new property once built. What is clear is the result will be a major adverse effect on the amenity of new neighbouring properties. So that amenity is my second issue. It's perhaps unsurprising the applicants have chosen to build a house around the dogleg behind their house and out of sight. The effect on other houses is much more dramatic, especially houses directly adjoining the proposed new building. Neil mentioned the Old Methodist Church. It's both a home and an artist's studio by the owner, a wonderful creative talent. Her view out in the back of the house will be directly into the new building with windows still overlooking. Frankly, the new building is of little architectural merit. White Horse Cottage will have the new building right up to its flint wall, a wall which I understand has already been damaged by the applicants for removing ivy. And having stood in those houses and in the saddlery, you really get to appreciate the impact which you don't necessarily get from the photographs, and how overlooked they all will be by the new development. Finally, we should talk about the River Meon, just at the far side of the site. This is a site of importance for nature conservation. The reports refer to the dangers to the development, whether that be questions on nitrates, issues with otters, bats and voles, or the danger to trees. The first duty of the South Downs National Park is to protect its natural beauty, and this proposal will threaten one of its chalk streams, its wildlife and its trees. Neil also covers some of the concerns here and why the supposed mitigations don't really add up. Chair, this is a difficult application, as Lisa makes clear in her report. She acknowledges that it's finely balanced. She's come down on the side of numerous conditions to address the issues rather than refusal. Local residents are really worried about that, and there are real concerns about the enforcement of conditions if they are ignored, something we have of course seen elsewhere. In addition, there is no appeal for neighbours in that scenario. They'll be stuck with the principle of development on this land. To my mind, it shouldn't be developed. Its impact on the neighbours, the issues with access and potential damage to the environment all support that. And it's not, as the report sort of suggests, it's not previously developed land. It's garden, and then it's been used recently for storage of rubbish. It's not previously developed land. There have also been some process issues. Applications have been greatly changed, but neighbours weren't given a full opportunity to make further comments. They didn't receive correspondence about it. Many objections weren't even told at this meeting. It is therefore more important than ever that the correct decision is reached. As I mentioned at the beginning, all of this will be much clearer if members were able to see the site, and I do ask that this is considered to look at the access and the river and the positioning and the overlooking issues. If not, I ask the application be refused on the grounds of breaches of numerous policies, including SD 1, 2, 9, 11 and dark skies. Thank you very much.
Right, perfectly timed. Thank you very much, Councillor Lumbie. Any questions?
The advantage of not having the camera, I can see the camera, which was quite, I can see the countdown clock, which I normally can't, so it's quite a pleasure.
Okay. And we managed without your lovely face. Vice Chair, any questions for Councillor?
Yes, Councillor Raphael has a question, Chair. Thank you.
Raphael?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon to you. Can you explain to me why there were no objections from the Parish Council about this development?
Well, I didn't attend the meeting where it was discussed, and therefore I haven't had an actual discussion with them on the point. However, it is, as you're seeing from the plans, away from the road, in that you go down the lane, it's hidden out of sight at the back. Therefore, whilst it's a rather unattractive development, in my view, I don't think it's been shown huge amount of imagination and fitting in with the development of the village and its architecture as a whole. It is largely out of sight, and therefore I think the view was it was rather one that was sort of back out of everyone's view, and therefore they didn't object. However, if you were at the meeting, you can probably tell me otherwise.
No, I wasn't in the meeting. I'm just reading from the paperwork. It says the Parish Council normally have their finger on the pulse of what's going on. They listen to what's been said to the parish councillors. So if they don't object to it, I think you're on a sticky wicket, personally.
Well, I don't know whether the objectors.
Can I cut this short, because there is no objection from the Parish Council, and you're not on the Parish Council, are you, Councillor Lumbie? So,
no, both Councillor Raphael and I attend the Parish Council.
So Councillor Raphael's given his opinion. You don't know the answer, and I think we'll leave that there, because there is no objection from the Parish Council.
Yep, no, absolutely.
So, Vice Chair, any more questions for Councillor Lumbie?
I have a brief question, Chair, if I may.
Councillor
Lumbie, yes, the application has been significantly amended since it was first put in, hasn't it?
Correct, yes.
Which I believe is why the Parish Council have withdrawn any objections that they might have had, because their concerns have been addressed by the changes that have been brought in. But is this not, are the changes not enough to reassure the local neighbours?
No, absolutely not. And there are a variety of things which very much remain. First of all, just going from the back of the site forward, this is extremely close to the river, and there's real concern about danger and impact, the trees being chopped down and things going into the river. So there's very much concern that even with the 5-metre buffer, the fact is the trees go right up, the lights will be on as well. It becomes a very tight site. There's still concern this is right up to the boundary of White Horse Cottage, and the owner of the Methodist Chapel is still very concerned that the housing, the windows are very much looking over towards her, and actually can be seen from the saddlery. When you look at the design, you'll see that on the ground floor there are big windows opening up on this way, and the bedroom where there are the first floor windows that can still be seen, which are referred to in the report. This is just referred to as a sort of feature bedroom, where, you know, it's a wonderful place to go, it's a wonderful master bedroom. To sort of perhaps sort of say, well, it's just a secondary room, I don't think is fair, and they don't think it's fair. They think there's a real feeling of people just looking directly into their houses from that first floor room. Then there is the access road, cars coming down. The real issue as to the volume of cars going down that lane, actually them stopping. The problem, and there was a photograph that we sent in yesterday, which unfortunately wasn't allowed to be put up, as apparently it wasn't in time, that shows we can't get vehicles, higher lorries, and a normal lorry, and we saw that van, for example, that couldn't get through. The issues of them stopping there, backing onto the road, concerns as to what happens if there is an emergency, how a fire engine could, for example, get down there. Dangers.
Thank you, Councillor Lumbie. I think you're repeating yourself now. Thank you very much. Thank you for your answer. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
We did hear what you said initially, Councillor Lumbie.
Okay.
Any more questions for Councillor Lumbie? I have one. If not, at the bottom, it's not the River Meon at Sosh. It's a tributary, isn't it?
Well, the way the River Meon works, Chair, sorry, I'll try and give you the short version of this one. The spring of the River Meon is further up the valley, but actually much of the River Meon actually only emerges slightly further down in Warnford, but because there's a large aquifer underneath. This is, however, a pretty major piece of water that's flowing down as part of the Meon. So
Okay, thank you.
It sort of
So
confusing.
does it, to your knowledge, flood? This was what I was leading up to.
Are there floods here? Well, I'm not aware of floods in this part. No,
Okay.
I'm not aware of floods here.
I'll ask the agent, perhaps.
Yeah,
Thank you
no,
very
that's a
much.
good idea.
Any more questions for Councillor Lumbie?
No more questions for Councillor Lumbie, no.
So thank you very much, Councillor Lumbie. If you'd like to turn your phone, camera and microphone off.
Thank you all very much.
Great. Thank you very much. And now we move on to the last public speaker, which is Richard Lowe, the agent. Good afternoon, Mr. Lowe.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you see me?
See you and see you.
Oh dear.
So
Well,
you have 3 minutes when you're ready.
thank you very much. This application provides for a new home for the applicants. Hannah Nettle has lived in the conservation area most of her life and wants now to settle there with her husband in a designed low carbon energy efficient house. They have the land, the opportunity and the pre-application support of your officers. Some local objection to the application has ensued, but principally from the owners of those properties that surround the application site. Otherwise, a mere handful of objections have been received from a village population of almost 800 people. Amongst the raft of NIMBY objections, for example, the loss of a view, the loss of rental income, the overbearing nature of a 3-storey dwelling, the false claims of overlooking and loss of light, the industrial warehouse architecture, and so on, the 2 or 3 objections that might have been grounded in policy have been fully addressed and have satisfied the relevant consultees. The objections from the few have been at times vituperative, abusive, personal and defamatory. Even members of the applicant's family have been accosted in the street. Of course, there is no development of this site that is going to find favour with the principal objectors. The essence of their objection is the loss or the diminution of a view over undeveloped land, to which they have no entitlement. Their other objections are, for the most part, just flummery. The applicants have bent over backwards working with your officers to address the objections and have voluntarily redesigned the proposed dwelling, the result of which is that it is now half the volume and sits lower on the site than the original application proposal that your officers had already confirmed was acceptable. There have been no objections from your conservation officer, your ecology officer, your drainage consultant, the Dark Skies Ranger, the parish council, the Environment Agency, County Highways or Natural England. It would be incomprehensible if you were now to refuse an application when all the technical and policy issues have been addressed to the complete satisfaction of your officers and the statutory consultees. This is why the recommendation before you is to approve the application. Conservation areas are not immutable. They develop and grow over time, and planning policy supports and encourages such change. The design is informed by the levels and configuration of the site and the disposition of neighbouring properties. It is a traditional form and uses the most traditional of external materials. It is an attractive development proposal that has no adverse impact upon the amenities of neighbours, on the settings of distant and unconnected listed buildings, or on the character of the conservation area within which it can barely be seen, and is commended to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. There could be some questions for you.
I'm sure.
Whilst others consider their questions, Chair, I have one, if that's okay.
Thank you. Councillor Rutter.
Hello, Mr. Lowe.
Hello.
Could I ask, there's been some question about the actual construction and how large vehicles are going to access the site. Can you just reassure members that that's been considered, or let us know what the thinking is? Thank you.
It will be. It has been considered. Of course, the applicants have constructed an extension to the rear of their own property anyway, and so materials have been delivered to that. It will form part of the construction management plan. That is a condition, or will be a condition, if you're minded to approve this application, that deliveries will be delivered safely and off-road. So there is nothing to stop a large delivery lorry from getting access to the front part of the site, from where they will need to, for example, distribute materials on something smaller. I mean, I think we accept that it would be difficult to get a large construction vehicle or construction delivery vehicle past the narrow corner of the host dwelling. But there is no barrier to getting a delivery vehicle to the front of the dwelling off the highway.
And following on from that, there is concern about the access for emergency vehicles, fire engines and so on. Could you comment on that?
The access for a fire engine is entirely in line with the building regulations. We don't need to get a fire engine close up to the front door of the building any more than someone in the 15th story of a block of flats does. Ditto ambulances, and ambulances these days are for the most part estate cars, and can access comfortably access the rear of the property.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any further questions?
No further questions, Chair.
And just to add into the bit about the fire engines, I live on a road, a private road, where you couldn't get a fire engine down, but then the fire engines have very long hoses these days, so they don't need to actually.
50 metres.
Thank you. So if you'd like to, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And if you'd like to mute your
microphone off, yeah.
That would be great. Thank you very much. And Lisa, would you like to give us any updates on what you've had?
Can you hear me? Yeah, oh, thank you. I don't have anything further to add, but I just want to point out, if you have any questions regarding ecology, we have Zoe Keeble, who is able to answer some questions if you need to.
I've certainly got a question for Zoe. We'll come to that under ecology. So we will move now to the questions on the report, and I'm going to take the first two sections. Principle of development and design scale and impact on the character of the area. That's on page 116, 117 and a bit on page 118.
Councillor Pearson has indicated he has a query for Lisa Booth, but I don't know which bit it's on, I'm afraid.
Councillor Pearson, are you asking questions?
It's the query relates to page 118.
Well, 118, we haven't got to that one yet.
No, indeed.
Oh, well, is it on residential amenity?
Sorry, yes, it is, Chairman.
And so we'll come to that next.
Okay.
Could I just ask Lisa about the parking spaces? And I'm sorry to ask you to go back to your presentation.
That's okay.
I see where the turning area was on your map. Or I could look at our report if you want to tell me where it is.
I have. I was going to say I have on my presentation. I have marked on distances. Obviously, this has been. There is 7 metres. Yeah, go down a little bit. One sec.
Are you doing it now?
I don't know.
Okay.
Just I was going to say make it big so I can scroll down. Yeah. So you can see the measurements there. I've just written on. So there is a 7 metre turning area there. Okay. So you can reverse back and move. You might have to do a few turns, but you can. There is room to manoeuvre there.
Okay, so you say that there are 3 parking spaces for the old bank.
Yeah.
Where there are just 2 parking
I think they've only just
and then the other one
illustrated 2 cars. There is room for 3 cars.
And they can turn there. And I did ask for the width of that. When I went down and visited it, I did think it looked narrow. It still looks narrow, even with your extra photograph of the van. I did ask for the width of the entrance up the top.
Yeah, the entrance at the top is from the water side, 4 metres, and obviously it goes down to 2.7. And then I did actually measure. It's not, I've not written it on here, but I think it's 2 metres according to this, between the bit that's not dark grey, the little triangle bit. Sorry, I can't get my mouse to go on there. Oh, there. No, where the triangle is. Under 2.7.
The below where it says 2.7, does that reduce the width there?
It's 2 metres from that little, from the point to the end of to the other side of the wall.
2 meters.
Sorry, I didn't mark that one on. I apologise.
Okay.
And then also it gets bigger. It's 2.9 and.
Yeah. Thank you. Got it.
But it's different when you went. I went in on Tuesday and the van was there. It was. I mean, I think the van can get past if you looked at the photos. From the back, there's room for it to get round there. So vans of that size can get down. So
where would the bins be stored, and would they have to be put out at the entrance? Because they're not allowed to block the pavements, are they?
Yes, I would assume that they would be put out
the
the entrance.
Bin store on that map.
I don't know where the bin store is.
You got a condition?
No.
Could look at that then, couldn't we?
Yeah. Okay. Oh no, there it is there. Sorry, I haven't got my glasses on. I can't really see.
Well, I can't.
It's at the back there. If you scroll down a little bit, sorry. I just think it's there with that washing line, and then
I can't see what you're looking at. I'm awfully sorry. I can't see. Okay.
It's on the right hand side at the back.
So the bins of both properties would need to be taken up that passageway and placed at the beginning to the passageway, or what? I know it's only once a week, but
yeah, it would have to be up the road, I would assume. So that's where it's collected from, because they're not going to they're not going to go down there with the dust lorry.
Oh, no. But currently 1 bin you can get past. I'm not sure whether you can get past 2 bins or 3 bins or 4 bins.
There's room the other side. Yes, I mean it obviously you put the bins. It's a personal responsibility. I would say.
I've got one last question.
On
the update sheet and on page 117, we're talking about the requirement for a 5-metre riparian buffer. And on the update sheet, we're told that this has been added to the application, but I couldn't see a condition on that.
The riparian buffer. Sorry, I think it's under one of the CMP.
Condition 9.
Yeah, condition 9. This will show how construction will avoid, minimise or mitigate effects on the River Meon sink and the associated 5-metre riparian buffer. This includes the storage of any equipment, machinery, materials, chemicals, dust suppression, chemical, fuel runoff from construction, waste disposal, noise, visual, vibrational impacts and lighting. So they'll provide a construction environmental management plan.
Okay, so what concerns me is the maintenance of this buffer. So that condition covers that, does it?
No, number 10. It's a biodiversity mitigation enhancement plan needs to be submitted, and it should include the appropriate establishment, planting and long-term management of the 5-metre riparian buffer, as well as other measures to ensure biodiversity, etc., etc.
Sorry, I said it's the last
wood,
question.
logs and things.
Page 126, the Environment Agency informative consideration given to the use of flood-proofing measures. Has consideration to that being given? Page 126.
Well, I'm just looking. Trying to make pardon? Yeah. Yes, I'm satisfied with that. That's.
Chairman, we're content that the Environment Agency's informative can be incorporated into the scheme before you.
I know it's an informative, and it says we strongly recommend, so that's quite strong from the Environment Agency. So the result of their strong recommendation is?
Chairman, we're content that those measures can be incorporated into this scheme, and some of them will be matters that are picked up by our building control department, which include those flood-proofing measures, etc. And I'm satisfied they're within this scheme satisfactorily that they would deal with the Environment Agency's strong recommendations.
Thank you, that's reassuring. Any more questions? We are still on principal development and design scale and impact on the capital.
No questions on those matters, Chair.
So let's move on then to impact on residential amenity and impact on ecology.
Is this where Councillor Pearson comes in, Chair?
Yes, please, if I may, Chairman. Lisa, thank you very much for an incredibly comprehensive report and very detailed. Doesn't leave much to ask a question about. However, page 118 and the impact on residential amenities, first, second, third, the beginning of the fourth paragraph, you say there is no right to a view. Now, I'm not quite sure whether that is correct within the national park. There's a specific policy about views. Could you comment on the difference between what you've said and what the national park says?
I think what policy is it? 1 second.
Can I come in?
That's more of a view. Oh, I've gone off again. Sort of tranquil views, I think it is, isn't it? Can't find it.
I do sit on the planning committee for the South Downs National Park, Councillor Pearson, as you know, and I've never known that come up. What the policies of the national park are the tranquility. But
50 safeguarding views, that's it. There.
Talking over me. So yeah, it is actually that the applications are landscape led rather than, so it's the other way around really.
So are you,
yeah,
Lisa, I'm not sure who's the expert here, whether it's Lisa or yourself, Chairman.
Yeah.
I think you're referring to SD6 safeguarding views.
Yes.
So I think it's sort of like more important views, you know, sort of strategic views, like if you in the sort of neighbourhood plans and things, you know, the parish will pick out strategic views across land or things like that. I think because when I'm saying there is no right to a view, a person doesn't have a right to a view, so you can't protect a person's view from, you know, if someone put a shed up, for example, that's a bit different from safeguarding landscape views. Does that make sense?
Well, to a degree, yes.
For the general public, for the wider public. So
well, it's not the wider public. We're talking about the immediate neighbours. whether they have a right for a view, which is now being impinged on by, or suggested impinged on by a new property, which would change their view of the landscape.
That's just a personal view. It's not for the wider general public.
Yeah, Chairman, if I can,
Well,
I think
related to the views, if we move on slightly from that, related to the views, a lot of comments about the proximity of neighbours' houses to this new building. Yeah, we look at the maps that you're showing, and none of those buildings seem to be close to this new building. Is this something that is actually not shown on your maps?
So could you say that again?
Well, a lot of the neighbours are commenting that, and some of the objectors commented on the fact that the new build is very close to their homes. I mean, other than that, well, even with a host home. And yet, when one looks at the maps that you've got in your package,
yes,
there don't seem to be any buildings that are that close. Is there something missing from the maps, or
no,
is their view exaggerating?
The view, yes, if you stood right at the end of their garden walls, then
Right.
yes, obviously it's going to be close, because there's a gap of 1.8 metres from the single story extension to the end of the wall of White Horse Cottage, but there's a gap of 27 metres to the main house. I've got to weigh up that people aren't going to sit at the bottom of their gardens looking over the wall. It's one, it's not very neighbourly, and two, you know, we just don't do it. But that's why I have to, you know, it's my job to sort of try and balance that up. And I know it's not, you know, appeasing everybody, but
okay, I think we probably got to the end of the. I know I've been dismissed as not being an expert, but I don't think we can refuse this.
No, Chairman, you misread what my intention was.
They're losing their view. Am I right? That
yes,
that wouldn't be a material planning consideration in this instance.
Yes, Chairman.
that's correct, Chair.
Thank you.
No further questions, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. So, and no questions for Zoe on ecology?
None indicated, Chair.
No. Well, thank you for coming along. Zoe, do you want to say anything to us about the ecology?
Thank you, Chair. I don't have anything particular to add, other than I think one of the speakers mentioned that the ecological assessment that was submitted in support was done in January, and I just wanted to say that that's acceptable. Phase 1 surveys can be done at any time of year. They can still take into account all the potential impact and protected species.
Okay. I was sort of disappointed that a vole survey had not been undertaken. Was that not a necessary requirement? Or?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Chair. We would have asked for a waterfall survey had they not provided that 5 metre buffer. That 5 metre buffer is in line with mitigation, so if they are present, then that's still standard and acceptable.
Okay, so this buffer, will it be marked out as an indication that this is the riparian buffer and nothing can happen garden-wise the other side of it?
So as part of Condition 10, the biodiversity mitigation enhancement plan, suitable plants in that area, and it could include a fence. We wouldn't want to obstruct any access to otters or other wildlife, but a loose fence could be used if we thought that was considered necessary. Okay,
thank you. Thank you for coming along, Zoe.
Could I ask a question of Zoe, Chair?
Of course, yes.
Could I just ask, I'm sorry, I haven't seen this in the conditions. Is that 5 metre buffer zone going to be protected during construction as well? Because an awful lot of damage could be done to it otherwise.
No. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, it will be. It's also going to be required within the Condition 9, the construction management plan. So we wouldn't want any machinery or equipment within that 5 metre buffer either. Thank you.
So we move on to the last bit of the report, which is page 120, 191. So we've got lighting. We've had questions about the dark night skies, trees, highways, comments about that, sustainable construction, nitrates, and anything else on the conclusion or the conditions on the next few pages.
We have Councillor McLean with a question, Chair.
Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. If I remember rightly, it was asked, would this be a good opportunity for a site visit to look at what is obviously a very difficult application in the middle of the South Downs National, or in the South Downs National Park. Quite a sort of major decision to make. Would or is there an appetite for a site visit from the committee to go and have a look at this and just see if we can confirm in our minds whether we're happy or not with it? It's easy for me because I live down the road, but
are you proposing a site visit?
I am proposing that, if there's somebody who wishes to second it.
Please have a seconder.
Seconded.
Okay, so we will have a vote on a site visit. Can I just point out, and I don't want to influence whether people want to say yes or no, but if there is a site visit, I will have to be arranged between this meeting. We will stop this application. I think I'm right in saying this, and the officers will verify it. We will stop all further discussion of it, and then a site visit will be arranged, not our traditional site visit, but ones in groups, which we have done in lockdown, and then we can't bring it to the next meeting because it's already full, so we will have to bring it back to the December meeting, which I think is the 17th. Am I correct in saying all that?
That's what we've done in the past. That's what we've done in the past.
Sorry, Chairman, Jeannie Pinnock. Yeah, you're correct. What we discussed, if this was deferred for a site visit, Chair, is that we would have to wait until after the current restrictions are lifted, the COVID restrictions, because obviously we couldn't meet as a group, either a number or in even small groups. So the current restrictions extend till the 2nd of December. I think after that time, depending on what happens nationally at that time, we would have to decide how we could facilitate a site visit with members to look at this site. I appreciate it probably been principally outdoors, but it's about the number of different people meeting together. And then because that's after the 2nd of December, as you said, we are full up already for the additional meeting we put on. And probably, I think, given that timing, we won't make the December meeting, the later December meeting either. So we're probably looking then at a January referral, and we would defer the item today for consideration by a site visit, and then we'd have to bring it back to you at a future date. Thank you, Chair.
If I may, Chair, just cut in as it's my suggestion. If I remember, we set a precedent on how to do one of these when we went to Alresford, and we broke up into small groups so we could have a look at the.
Councillor McLean, we know that.
Well, that's why I'm just because it seemed we were trying to talk ourselves out of the site visit because of time.
I did say before I said all this that just be conscious of this fact. We will have to wait until December the 2nd anyway, or is it the 3rd, to see what the Prime Minister is going to announce. So nothing can be decided.
No, I agree.
So that visit will mean that we will go to the site, perhaps in groups, probably not in a large group, and then because of the timing of getting the papers out on the agenda, then that would delay it coming back to PDC. So that's all I'm saying. That's the reality. So I'm going to ask Dave to do a roll call of members and whether they are for or against a site visit.
Yes, thank you. Yes, as you explained, Councillor Clear.
Oh, against.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Gordon-Smith.
I'm for a site visit.
Councillor Laming.
For.
Councillor McLean.
For.
Councillor Raphael.
For.
Councillor Rutter.
Against.
And Councillor Pearson.
For.
So that's carried.
Yeah, so there will be a site visit, but we can't arrange a date at the moment until we know the outcome of what will happen after the lockdown. and then we'll be in touch. I think that's all we can say, but probably we'll have to come back to committee. Sorry about this to the applicant, but that's our system, probably to the January committee. So we now move on to the next item. Lots of crackling going on, so if anyone's still got their camera, whatever, on, could they turn it off? How are we doing, Dave, with members of the public and timing? We're 3:05.
Chair, I do believe that there's any members of the public for the next item, and all the members of the public for the item after that, which is the Wickham Group Surgery, are all in the waiting room at the moment. Not at the surgery, that is, but in the team's surgery, team's waiting room.
Okay, so I didn't quite catch all of that. So we go on to the Durley one. We don't have any members of the public, and all the members of the public who want to speak are for item 14 are here. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. So we move on then to agenda item 13, 20/00720/HOU, which is part retrospective, Maxwell House, Mincingfield Lane, Durley. It's the erection of a detached 4-bay garage with gym and home office within the roof space, and associated alterations to ground levels, including the erection of retaining walls. The case officer is Curtis Badley. Good afternoon, Curtis. And I see you've got your presentation up on screen. When you're ready, we're looking forward to your presentation.
Is it a left click on the mouse to proceed, Dave?
I believe that's the case.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. I'm Curtis. I'm going to be the case officer presenting for the erection of the outbuilding and associated alterations at Maxwell House, and will proceed with my presentation. So firstly, here we have the aerial shot of the site and the comparative site location plan on the left-hand side of your screens. So the site is rural in character and is set to the north of Mincingfield Farm, which is shown here with my cursor, to the bottom right-hand side of your slide. To the bottom left is Grassy Mead, a residential property. The site spans over 4 acres with the built form to the southern edge. Again, the site shown here on the aerial photography on the right-hand side, and on the left-hand side an excerpt of the site location plan. So here we see below the wording Maxwell House, the existing dwelling house. To the bottom left, the southwest of that would be the existing detached garage, and the existing stable block below to the southwest, which is partially divided from the site by existing hedgerow. The access to the site, as seen through the aerial photography on the right-hand side, is from the southwest corner and provides the driveway parking space for the property. As shown on the right-hand side, the site is well screened from established trees and hedgerow which surround the boundary. Here we have an excerpt of the proposed block plan, which shows the position of the proposed outbuilding on screen now, which is 10 metres to the northeast of the existing dwelling house. The site slopes from east to west, so the left-hand side of the left-hand side of the site is at a lower elevation than the right-hand side, and the bold lines here on the proposed block plan shows the extent of the retaining walls which have been built and are part of the part retrospective application. Here we have again the proposed site plan. Apologies, because of the topography labels it's more difficult to read, but still clearly shows the proposed new garage. Here the existing dwelling house and its retention within the site and extent of hard standing, which is outlined through the clear solid line here. The surface water treatment is also shown, as is the boundary walls which surround the rear and northern side of the garage outbuilding. Here we have the proposed elevations for the outbuilding. They provide 4 enclosed parking spaces, as shown here, which face towards the front of the site and is reflective of the form and design of the neo-Georgian dwelling which exists on site. Here we have the proposed floor plans. So the size of the outbuilding is determined by the 4 car parking spaces on the ground floor apron, here labelled garage on the left-hand side. Here is the access to the back right of the building, which proceeds upwards towards a landing, a home office, a home gym, and a small store within the roof space, which has been extended through the provision of 2 dormer windows on the front and 2 to the rear of the outbuilding, which is to be provided for ancillary use to the main dwelling house. These sectional diagrams show how the cut and fill exercise, which has been undertaken on site, allow the outbuilding to be set into the existing hillside. This is shown clearly here on the proposed north elevation and the proposed south elevation, where the red line would indicate the natural topography of the land. Here, looking from the rear of the site forward, shows the extent of the outbuilding, which is screened as a result. Here we have the proposed landscaping plan. The site, as I have suggested, is surrounded by well-established trees and hedgerow. The access, clearly shown within this drawing, is from the southwest of the site and follows on towards the front of the existing dwelling. As part of the proposals, this hard standing, which consists of block pavers which are permeable, allowing water to seep through, extend northwards and enclose the surroundings of the proposed outbuilding. Here, and I will demonstrate using the cursor, are the retaining walls which surround the outbuilding and the existing dwelling house to which it relates. As part of this proposal, there is also additional planting of hedgerow, trees and of grass and more planting areas, which are indicated here. And there's 2 trees on the eastern boundary, here and here, 1 tree on the western boundary adjacent to the roadway, and additional planting, a new tree here to soften the impact of the engineering works and hard landscaping proposed. I provided a number of photographs with context. This is the existing 1970s neo-Georgian style dwelling house, the existing access and the existing parking and driveway provision to the existing site. On the right hand side is the southern aspect of the site and screens the stables. This is looking 180 degrees towards the southwest of the site, the existing access and the screening provided from the public realm. I provided a number of photographs which show the extent of works which have been partially undertaken on site. This photograph shows the siting of the proposed outbuilding, which will be enclosed by the retaining wall structure, and shows the height of the proposed boundary walls, which are to be 2 meters in height, screening the visual impact of the structure. This retaining wall to the rear will be partially screened by the proposed building. Provided further photographs showing the extent of works on the site. So this is from the existing access facing towards the north of the site. To the left is the existing catchment pond, and this low retaining wall will be built and brought up to level to allow the access, parking and turning space in front of the proposed outbuilding. And showing the site from the lower elevation, to the north. On the right hand side we have the existing catchment pond. On the left hand side, on the very edge, we can see the extent of the retaining wall, and in the rear of the photograph, the existing property and outbuilding. It's not indicated as part of the proposals that a new access will be made as part of this application. I understand that the tracks and the levelling which has been undertaken is due to the machinery which is traversed over this land and will be restored following works. This photograph is taken from the rear of the site, shows the level ground to the rear of the property, and in the background the existing access. And looking northwards, the extent of the extensive site which has been levelled and allows the natural topography of the land by spreading the soil which has been extracted over, so that there is not a significant impact upon the surrounding elevations and ground levels. So this concludes my presentation. The proposal represents a large building which has been significantly embedded into the landscape using retaining walls and additional planting. In consideration of the relative screening of the site, remedial works that have been undertaken, and relationship with the existing house and site, the proposal is considered to be acceptable, and the proposal would not have an adverse impact upon the character and appearance of the property, area, or upon the amenities of the neighbouring properties. The proposal therefore complies with local planning policy and is acceptable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We have no public speakers, and so we will move to the headings. And starting on page 157, we'll start with principle of development and design and layout. Curtis, this is coming in as a part retrospective application. Which bits are retrospective? So walls, presumably?
Yes, that's correct, Chair. So the walls, retaining walls on site, are part of the works which have already commenced, and also the engineering works using the extraction of that part of the hillside to which the to which the walls support.
And could you comment on the Parish Council, Durley Parish Council's objection, and it is in the letters of objection as well, about encroachment of the agricultural field? Where was it?
So the proposal is not considered to extend the domestic curtilage of the dwelling house, and not considered to define the domestic curtilage of the dwelling house. It wasn't defined within. Is that okay? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Yes, so it's not.
Yeah, thank you. Apologies.
It is encroached. Yes. Okay. So, members, any questions? Principle of development, design, and layout.
Chair, I've got a question. I think it's about sort of design and layout. I just wanted to know if the existing garage is going to be demolished, or is that going to be retained? Do we know? Just as a matter of interest.
I understand that the existing outbuilding, the garage, is to be retained and is not as part of the proposals. And just storage for the dwelling house.
Thank you. We have Councillor Pearson with a question, Chair.
Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Chair. Curtis, the floor area of the proposed garage, how does that compare with the floor area, the ground floor area of the existing house? According to your plans, the garage, proposed new garage, looks bigger than the house.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. So the comparable sizes in terms of the ground floor area is comparable between the existing property and the proposed outbuilding. In terms of visual impact and the perceived harm as a result, it is not considered to be significant. This is rebutted by the landscape consultation comments, and the relationship is considered to be acceptable between the property and the outbuilding which is ancillary to it. I understand that, and as suggested within my presentation, the floor area for the garage is somewhat as a result of the provision of the 4 car parking spaces. So I understand that the use is to securely and be weather tight and enclose the cars, and that's the reason why the building is to this extent, and it's not considered to be harmful to the surrounding area or landscape on that basis.
Well, okay. Regarding the design and layout, which is part of the same question we're asking here, it's proposed that this is not only a garage, but effectively an office come gym. And yet there are no health and safety facilities proposed in this building, i.e. water supply, toilet, which health and safety for an office would require. Is there a particular reason for that? Or is this accidental and they're going to propose later to have that added? Because then that raises the question, is this going to turn into secretly a unit of accommodation?
Thank you again for your question. I understand that the facilities provided within the outbuilding are to be used in association with the main dwelling house. I'm not aware of certain legislation which would lead to suggest that toilet and washroom facilities would be required for a home office or a home gym, where they would be able to pass through to the existing dwelling house to use those facilities and to be used in association with that as well. In terms of the future use of the outbuilding, there is a condition which is attached to the recommendation for a grant of planning permission, which would be for the ancillary use of the outbuilding, and it is considered the relationship does accord with our countryside policy, which does allow buildings of this nature in association with the existing dwelling house as well.
Would you allow this development if it was attached to the main house? Speculative, I know.
Councillor Pearson.
I've gone too far, have I? Okay.
That is not what's in front of us.
Okay, I was pushing my luck there. I recognise.
Yes. Chair, Councillor Laming has a question as well. Thank you.
Councillor Laming.
Yes, well, first of all, thank you, Frank, for asking most of my question. What safeguards have we got that this wouldn't be converted into a house or dwelling part not associated with the main house? Because this being the ground floor size of it would make it ideal to convert it into a separate house.
Just a reminder that that's not the current application, Councillor Laming.
I know, but I'm only looking at the conditions of what goes on with it, because we've seen various manoeuvres.
The conditions probably attach it to the main house, sure.
That's what I wish to confirm.
To clarify, yes, there are conditions within the proposed recommendation, one of which is the plans which show the format and layout of the proposed outbuilding, indicating the garage use and the ancillary use above. The elevations lend themselves to the garage use with those 4 doors to the front of the outbuilding. And again, the condition, I believe it's condition number 4, for the accommodation to be used ancillary to the main dwelling house.
Yeah, it is condition.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Sorry, Chair, no more questions. Thank you.
Okay, good. So we are on the impacts on character of the area and impact on neighbouring amenities.
No questions indicated, Chair.
And then all the rest of the report: landscape and trees, highways and parking, drainage, any other matters, and the conditions, informative, conclusion.
No more questions, Chair.
So we'll move into debate. I'll start. I didn't get to see this property because the road was closed, and so I don't know what was going on. It is very large, but it is a large house as well. So I think it's probably reassuring that there's no toilet facilities and whatever, because that would take away the perhaps a fear or whatever that people think it's going to turn into a house. Yeah, an awful amount of work. I hope it's going to look lovely. I'm reassured that there's no encroachment into agricultural land, and so I can see no reason to refuse it, no planning reason.
We have Councillor Pearson wishing to debate, Chair.
Councillor Pearson?
Yeah, I recognise what you've just said, Chairman. It's a nice design. Indeed, the only time I've ever seen a building of this design before was a stables that suddenly appeared in Swammell by the old dog kennels. You probably recall it. Similar size, but this is not a stable. This is a garage, I guess, modern equivalent. It's the sheer size I find mind-boggling. Ground area the same size as the ground area of the main house. I find this mind. I like very much the idea what they've done, the landscaping. I recognise the reason of retaining walls, and indeed, if you're going to put a garage there, you would have to have the retaining walls. But the size of this building, I find absolutely mind-boggling. And is this acceptable? I've got to ask. I'd be interested to see what other members say about it. I mean, it really is massive. And it really begs the question, is it going to stay a garage in the future? But that's speculation. It's the sheer size of the building I find very, very difficult.
Vice Chair, any more contributions?
Yes, Chair, we have Councillor McLean. Thank you.
Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. It is a big building, but I have seen other buildings of similar size passed by, not by the committee, but by the officers within the Mearn Valley, where there are gardens with very large plots that accept this type of building. On a smaller garden, it wouldn't work, but it can be done. They are fitted in out there. If the guy, who obviously I'm guessing has a number of cars, he wants to garage his cars. Again, what is the problem with that? Yes, a big building, but just because it's a big building doesn't mean it shouldn't get planning permission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McLean.
No more debate, Chair.
No more. So this application has been recommended for approval. The conditions are set out on page 160, informatives on 161, and I will now pass over to Dave Shaw, who will do a roll call of how members wish to vote on this application. Dave?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Clear?
4.
Councillor Evans?
4.
Councillor Gordon-Smith?
4.
Councillor Laming?
4.
Councillor McLean?
4.
Councillor Raphael?
4.
Councillor Rutter?
4.
And Councillor Pearson?
Reluctantly 4.
So that's, again, all members in favour, Chair.
Thank you. So that application is approved. Before we go on to agenda item 14, I know there are members public speakings who were waiting for this. Members, do you wish to take a 5-10 minute break?
A 5-minute break, I think, would be appreciated, Chair.
Yes, it is.
Yes, thank you. I'll just do a quick roll call of members. Councillor Clear?
Yes, thank you. Present.
Councillor Evans?
I'm here.
Councillor Gordon-Smith?
Yes.
Councillor Laming?
Present.
Councillor McLean?
Present.
Councillor Raphael?
Present.
Councillor Rutter?
Present.
And Councillor Pearson?
Present.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Then all members are present in the meeting.
So, good afternoon, members of the public, and welcome back to members of the committee.
Chair, could we ask that Councillor Lorraine Rapp turns the microphone off, please?
Right. Sorry to ask you to do that, but otherwise there's so much feedback coming back at us, we can't hear whoever's speaking. And sorry for the slight delay. We have all been on in virtual meetings for the planning since 9:30 this morning. And although we're sort of fresh and eager, we just needed a quick break before we get on to this application. Welcome to agenda item 14. Wickham Surgery Extension, case number 20/01484/FUR, extension to the Wickham Surgery of 3.8 metres, namely the gudgeon wing, and alterations to the roof void, which are currently used as storage, to provide an additional 12 GP consulting rooms and associated with hard and soft landscaping. This will be at Wickham Group Surgery, Houghton Way in Wickham. The case officer is Curtis Badley, who I see has already very efficiently loaded his presentation up on the screen. So when you're ready, Curtis, please go ahead with your presentation.
Sorry, Chair. Chair, could I just remind you and Councillor Clear to repeat your declarations, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I have already declared this, but Mr. Sullivan is requiring that Councillor Clear and I remake our declarations of interest. I have several personal interests in this item. I live in Wickham, and so I am a patient at this surgery. I'm also a member of the Wickham Parish Council. The decision to support was taken at a planning meeting, which I was present virtually, but I made no comment, took no part in the decision. And finally, I was asked by the senior doctor whether I would write a letter of support in principle of the extending the surgery for better facilities for existing patients, which I was happy to do, but I kept my reservations about considering the planning application, which I'm doing today separately. I have been a member of the planning committee for over 25 years, and it will be the material planning considerations that I am looking at today. So those are my personal interests, but I haven't predetermined this application. Councillor Clear? I think you've got
Chair, I wish to declare a personal but not prejudicial interest, as I am a patient with Wickham Group Surgery. I am also a ward councillor and chair of Wickham Parish Council, but I am not on the planning committee for Wickham, and when this was raised at the planning committee, I did not take part in the proceedings or the discussion at the time. So I declare a personal but not prejudicial interest. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yes, Curtis Badley, case officer, and we are looking forward to hearing your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. So following on, I will now be presenting the proposals to extend and alter the existing Wickham surgery to provide additional consultation rooms. So my first slide here on screen shows the site. So the site is established, the surgery is currently in use, and as we've heard, have patients. The existing building is outlined here as labelled Wickham Surgery. On the eastern side is Houghton Gardens, which is a residential cul-de-sac. To the south is a community sports leisure use. To the north and to the west of the site is countryside, which is bounded by hedgerow. This is the comparative aerial photography of the site. So this shows the existing settlement of Wickham to the southeast, the edge of settlement location of the existing surgery, the buildings. So you can see the reddish clay tiles of the surgery roof, the access which comes down towards the label Wickham Community Centre, and the adjoining uses, both residential and community. Here we have the comparable site location plan on the left-hand side and the aerial photography on the right-hand side. So the site access here, Houghton Way, provides access to the properties in Houghton Gardens, which I believe is 22 properties, and also to the community facilities to the south. This leads on to the parking provision, which is shown, the majority of it, to the south of the surgery in the image here, and also the road which leads up to the north of the surgery as well, and the adjoining boundary treatment shown clearly within the aerial photography, where it is very verdant. I have shown here the existing site plan. So this is the existing access which follows through along the eastern boundary of the site, the existing access and entrance into the surgery itself, and the adjoining parking and access routes. To the south, dealt with under a separate application, I believe determined in January of this year, was the dental surgery, which provided 3 additional consultation rooms in association with the dental practice. Aside is the Gudgeon wing, which is to the east and projects out towards these properties as blocked here, which are the rear of the properties in Houghton Gardens, and the site boundary which exists along between the two. Here we have the proposed site plan and the extent of the extension and alteration to the existing surgery building. This is shown in red and shows the extent of the proposed built form being added as a result of this extension. So it's the limited and, in the context of the site, very moderate extension, 2 stories to the side projecting outwards to the east of the existing Gudgeon wing, and the conversion and alteration of the roof space through the use of dormer windows, roof lights and sun tunnels. This again is shown within the proposed site plan, which is slightly different to the previous, showing the green verdant aspect of the boundaries and showing the parking formation. So additional spaces are provided amongst the existing formation to the south of the site, amongst the existing parking provision. The access road follows up to the east of the site, and there is a footpath which shown here is diverted as a result. So the corner of the north of the footpath is being clipped by the proposed extension, and as a result is being diverted around the extension and retaining the footpath and pedestrian access to the north of the site. Adjoining this to the east is the public access way, which primarily goes towards the staff parking up to the north, along with bin storage and some additional patient parking. This is also retained and retains viable for use for the services which also proceed along this access to the north. So the following photographs are excerpts of the drawings provided as part of the planning application submission. So I'm also looking to add some clarity over the existing uses within the Gudgeon wing, as I understand that this has been addressed within the update sheet showing the provided rooms within this wing. So here we have the entrance to the surgery. There are 2 health education rooms to the north and 2 private consulting rooms to the south. So there's 4 rooms at the bottom, 4 rooms within the ground floor, apologies, and 2 of those are GP consulting rooms. This is the proposed layout of the ground floor of the surgery. So here the entrance lobby remains inclusive, and being provided as part of the proposals are fit for standard stairwell and lift facilities to provide suitable access into the newly created first floor, and within the ground floor is 7 consulting rooms. So previously there were 2 consulting rooms and 2 public health rooms. all within the same public health provision, service and use class, of course. This also shows the diverted footpath, which swings around to the north east of the proposed extension. This also shows the extent of the projection being very limited at 3.8 metres. Here we have the first floor plan and shows the use of the first floor of the Gudjon wing as storage, and the comparative proposed first floor plan, which shows the majority conversion of this space. So the majority of this space already does exist and is being facilitated through additional headroom and natural light by the dormer windows, 3 of which are placed to the south elevation, so to the front of the site, and 4 to the rear, looking to the north of the site. This also shows the accessibility and the stairwell, which follows through from the lobby, the lift and the associated consulting rooms which are provided. So there are 7 consulting rooms within this first floor, which in addition to the 7 on the ground floor provide 14 consulting rooms, and that's a net increase of 12 consulting rooms from the existing provision. And of course there are already existing the 2 public health rooms within the ground floor. Here is the existing roof plan. It's largely undisturbed and shows the hipped roof form. And to compare the proposed roof plan, the extension projects and continues the hipped roof form, but as you can clearly see here, is interrupted through integrated dormers. Within the building, there are already a number of examples of these integrated dormers, and the form is to closely match the existing surgery. Here also are the roof lights to provide natural light to the lobby, and these sun tunnels, which I understand provide light to the medical storage facilities which are below. Here we have the existing front and side elevations and the comparable proposed front and side elevations. So on the top right hand side of your screen, it shows the provision of the extension and the extension of the hipped roof form and the dormer windows, which of course follow suit. This is further shown within the rear elevation, where there are already integrated dormers within the main building, and this shows the existing rear elevation of the wing, which is to be extended as part of the proposals through integrated dormers and the 2-storey extension, which is the left hand side of your screen, which would be to the east side of the existing building. As part of the proposals, there is also to be provided an automated prescription dispenser. This is included as an amendment to the original scheme and is in the main form and the main bulk of the existing surgery building. So as you can see here from the excerpt of the proposed ground floor plan, this would work like a ATM and is similar in terms of its stature and form, in so much that the patients and users of this proposed dispenser would access from externally, and there would be no manned service internally, and would be automated for a limited reduction in the ground floor space to the, I believe it's the waiting room, the lobby, which is of course publicly accessible internally as well. I have included some site photographs. These are previous photographs before the provision of the dental surgery. So in the bottom left photograph, which would extend out to the left of this image, is, I believe it's not shown here clearly, but would be the dental surgery, which is an extension to the existing form. On the top right photograph, again, would extend and eliminate those parking spaces next to that lamppost, and they have been considered as part of the previous application, have been considered during the existing and proposed plans technical highways document, and also through the provision of the scheme as well. So that's taken into account the provision, both of the dentist extension and also of the car parking alterations. Here we have 2 photographs which show towards the north of the site the bicycle storage on the bottom left hand side, and the access which continues around, and the space, so this grassed area will be extended into as part of the proposals. As you can clearly see here, the first floor does not contain any windows. This is also to be conditioned as part of my recommended grant of approval in order to ensure the privacy of the residents and the rear residential gardens of the properties within Houghton Gardens is retained as well. These are some long views of the existing surgery and show the access which continues down, which is Houghton Way, towards the settlement of Wickham to the southeast of the site. And to conclude, my recommendation is to approve the proposed scheme. The proposal is considered to provide an effective approach to improving and enhancing the facilities available at the Wickham surgery for residents of Wickham and the surrounding villages through the modest extension and alteration of the existing building. The proposal would not have a significant adverse impact upon the character and appearance of the property and area or amenities of the neighbouring properties. The proposal therefore complies with local planning policy and supplementary planning guidance, and my officer's recommendation is approval, and that concludes my presentation, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kirsty. Thank you. So we move to the public participation. To start with, we have objectors. We have 2 objectors, Wendy Greenish and Jeff Philpotts. Good afternoon to you both, Mrs. Greenish, Mr. Philpotts. I have seen Mr. Philpotts, I know he's there. And Mrs. Greenish, good afternoon. And you have 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes. So I don't mind how you wish to split that up, but at the end of 3 minutes, I will have to stop you at the end of your sentence. A clock will appear once you start, so you can keep an eye on the time.
I will be speaking first, followed by Jeff. Thank you.
Great. So, Mrs. Greenish, off you go.
I represent Wickham Society and Wickham Residents Association. We welcome the statement from Wickham Surgery that it is no longer their intention to take on significant numbers of patients from the new Wellbourne Garden Village. Our original objection was based on the doubling of patient numbers suggested in their first statement and the letters of support from the local clinical commissioning groups stating that the surgery extension would be needed to accommodate the anticipated 14,000 future Wellbourne residents. As far as we are aware, these letters have not been withdrawn or revised. We remain concerned that the CCGs will not respect the revised intention of the surgery and will use this enlargement of the building to justify creating a primary healthcare hub for Wickham and Wellbourne residents at Wickham Surgery. Such an outcome would be of huge detriment to both communities, as clearly stated in the letters of objection sent in response to this application. If this application is granted, we request that it is subject to confirmation from the clinical commissioning groups that they no longer expect Wickham Surgery to include Wellbourne within its catchment area beyond the initial period of build as defined in the Wellbourne strategy.
I'm Jeff Philpotts from Wickham Community Land Trust. Our residents live next to the surgery. Our recently added response to the TIA provides detailed backup for the points I'm making. Very briefly, a TIA was required by the Highway Authority with a holding objection. It was late. Hampshire County Council have not had a chance to respond. The TIA is misleading and it doesn't deal with the key traffic and safety issues. It misleads because it assesses car parking requirements using a parking count when surgery use was down by 50% and 66% because of the pandemic. It uses town and surgery figures to assess trips for a rural surgery. It fails to deal with unsafe parking and driving on the unadopted road between Mill Lane and the surgery. This access road serves the community centre, the surgery, and parents taking their children to school. It is really busy. The children of our residents are at risk crossing that road. There should be no increase in surgery provision because there is no acceptable TIA showing the trips and the parking requirements, and there must be adequate car parking and enforced parking restrictions on the unadopted access road. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Questions, Vice Chairman, for Mrs. Greenish or Mr. Philpotts?
There are no questions currently indicated, Chair.
Okay, so thank you very much, both of you, for coming along and for giving your presentations this afternoon. And I'm sure that there will be questions for the practice manager on the issues that you've raised. So we move on to the Parish Council representative, Councillor Lorraine Rapé. Good afternoon, Mrs. Rapé.
Good afternoon, everyone.
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Considering this application, the parish received direct input from 2 surgery representatives to learn more about the proposed extension. Questions were asked, including those from 2 Wickham residents who were present. Clinical commissioning groups predict an expected increase of patients over the next decade. Importantly, it's noted that the surgery has already reached its full capacity of 13,000 patients. So responsibly, the practice is addressing how it needs to adequately prepare and continue services for all existing and expected influx of new patients. CCGs determine the boundary areas for surgeries. The surgery is not coterminous just with Wickham Parish. It takes patients from surrounding areas stretching to the neighbouring Fareham borough's intended Wellbourne development. In the parish itself, there are 3 new planned developments, 1 now underway and some more likely to be forthcoming. This requested extension will be needed to serve these new parish communities with far more immediacy than ever the nearby Wellbourne. National plans for healthcare are changing to provide more local community services and reduce in many instances the need for hospital visits. So additional space is required for new anticipated services. The parish councillors listened to 2 main concerns of residents. 1, insufficient car parking, and 2, the increased traffic to the surgery, mainly coming from the anticipated Wellbourne dwellers. Compared with many local surgeries, this practice is currently well endowed with car parking spaces. Nevertheless, the practice indicated its plans and discussed how it will increase the number. Wellbourne is going to take a long time to build, and concerns about the practice taking on all residents have now been further dismissed from the time when we discussed it. This application is important for excellent healthcare to be continued. If rejected, new patients are still going to increase and cause real operating difficulties. Taking everything into account, the parish came down on the side of the importance of the need of having continuing good healthcare, and providing a new extension will help with this. So overall, the view was that the actual extension should be allowed because the benefits to the communities will outweigh the objections.
Well done. Within the time. We're just waiting to see whether there's a question for you. Vice Chair.
No questions, Chair.
So thank you very much, Councillor Rapé, for coming along. If you could just mute your...
I will.
Turn your camera off. Same old routine. And now we'll move on to a ward councillor, Councillor Neil Cutler. Good afternoon, Councillor Cutler.
Oh, good afternoon, Chair. I know you and the committee have had a long day already, so I'll be brief.
Right, you have 5 minutes anyway.
I have 5 minutes, but I will try to keep it brief. I support this application. The provision of good and timely healthcare facilities are of huge importance to our communities. Wickham Surgery provides services to a wide area, both in Wickham and beyond, including Knoll, Borehunt and Southwark in my ward, and also residents in the Mearn Valley and north to Shedfield and Shirrell Heath. Surgery is clearly already at full capacity, with significant waiting times for appointments reported to me by residents. Addition of, for example, 120 extra homes at Wickham Court Mobile Home Park in North Borehunt, with all the residents being over 50, has already added to the strain within the catchment of the surgery. Further development of 200 houses in Wickham and potential further development at Knoll will require yet further capacity. Whilst I understand the concerns about some additional traffic, the addition of extra services such as physiotherapy, midwife, audiology and mental health services will actually reduce the amount of time travelled in the wider area. And I think we have to balance the two things up, as local people will not have to travel far or so far to access these services, and it's obviously more sustainable if residents don't have to travel so far for these extra services. I share the Wickham and Knoll residents' concerns about the impact of Wellbourne, but we have assurances both from Fareham Borough Council and the developers that they intend to provide on-site provision, and it's a future battle to ensure that the NHS use this provision. Residents of Wickham and the surrounding villages need these improved facilities now, and therefore I support the application. And I think that's as much as I need to say, and managed to do it in 2 minutes, Chair.
Well done. Yes, thank you very much. Have a brownie point. And there may be some questions for you, Councillor Cutler. I'll just check with the Vice Chair.
No questions indicated, Chair. Thank you.
No, so thank you very much, Councillor Cutler. If you can, do all the muting and turning off, that would be great. So we have now 3 supporters. Mr. Ed Kennedy, who I believe is the practice manager, one of the doctors, Dr. Inglis, and then Martin Rogers. Now, you only have 3 minutes to share between the 3 of you. So I don't mind which order you speak in, but I will have to stop you when your 3 minutes is up.
I'm going to talk. I'm going to talk for me, and we've joined ours together for me and Ed. So it'll be me first, and then Martin.
Mr. Inglis is not speaking, and then Martin Rogers is speaking.
No, Doctor. So I'm Dr. Ingalls. I'm going to be speaking. Ed Kennedy's not going to be speaking, and then Martin Rogers is going to follow on from me.
I'm sorry, Doctor.
No, it's okay.
You're underneath E. Kennedy, so.
It's because I was busy seeing patients when we had to get the administration sorted out. That was what happened. So I apologise for that.
Anyway, you have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you very much. As I say, I'm one of the GPs at Wickham Surgery, and we applied for planning permission to extend the surgery by 3.8 metres. This is to ensure we can continue to be sustainable and offer safe and effective primary healthcare services in the medium and long term to all of our patients. We are currently at capacity as we now have over 13,000 patients, and we're struggling for room space for GPs and nurses. Information from the Clinical Commissioning Group tell us that our local population is growing steadily for the foreseeable future, and more patients need more doctors, nurses and support staff. Despite the national GP recruitment crisis, we are confident we can continue to attract good doctors to Wickham, and we have plans to increase our number of trainee doctors as well. We also have an increasing need for space to accommodate other clinicians to complement the services we already have. This would include clinical pharmacists, extended scope physiotherapists, mental health practitioners, paramedics and physicians associates, all of which will come via our primary care network. At Wickham, we believe in a holistic approach to health and patient care, and therefore we've tried hard to accommodate midwives, audiologists, community podiatrists, Parkinson's specialist nurses and other allied health professionals. We also care passionately about keeping phlebotomy services at Wickham rather than patients having to go to hospital for their blood tests, which can occur at other surgeries if you run out of space. We know our patients really value access to these services. However, without an increase in our room capacity, we'll be unlikely to be able to retain all of these services at the surgery. Whether we extend or not, our population will continue to grow. We feel an extension to the building is the best way to deliver healthcare to the entire population. As a primary care team, we want to offer as a wide range of patient services as possible and to deliver high quality primary care. We cannot do that if we do not have enough consulting room space within the surgery. That's me finished. I don't know if Martin's there.
So I'm Martin Rogers, I'm the Head of Primary Care for West Hampshire Clinical Commissioning Group. We are the NHS statutory body charged with responsibility to plan and procure health services for the community in West Hampshire. In relation to primary care services, otherwise GP services, we work very closely with our local practices and other stakeholders to make sure that we plan and we provision the estate that is necessary to deliver services and that enables the delivery of NHS strategy in terms of moving services out of hospital where possible and closer to patients. We work very closely with Wickham Surgery and other practices in the vicinity and feel that the proposed development is necessary and has our support in future-proofing the estate needs to deliver primary care services to the catchment area of the practice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On the dot. Thank you very much. There may be some questions for you. There will be, because I've got two. As you know, if you've looked at the website, there has been an inordinate number of objections, and I'd just like to address two of those. Would somebody like to put me right about the Wellbourne Garden Village? This is not aimed to be part of this practice, is it?
Do you want to answer this, Martin, or shall I?
Either of you. I just wish you to address that.
You go ahead, Ben.
The fear of the residents that they're not going to be able to get into the surgery because it would be dominated by looking after Wellbourne patients. So
Wellbourne's a complicated 20-year proposal and delivery of healthcare to it is going to be complicated. We are discussing it with both local CCGs and neighbouring practices in Fareham to work out what the best way of delivering healthcare is through the entire development for the population, and there are no firm plans at this moment. The statement that we put out that we were discussing redrawing our boundary with our local commissioners is absolutely accurate, and that's what we're doing, but there's no resolution to that process yet, as we only started that very recently.
Mr. Rogers?
If I may just add to that, I totally support what Ben said. I would say that the situation isn't settled. There are dynamic conversations involving, as Ben says, all of the local practices that might potentially provide access to patients of the new development. And we also involve Fareham Borough Council in those ongoing discussions.
Thank you. And then the other issue that seems to have caused a bit of concern is car parking. Can somebody talk to me about car parking?
We absolutely intend to maximise the spaces on the site through some redesign of the existing car park, as well as expanding the staff car parking area. We have looked to see if we can extend the car park in the surrounding land, and currently that land is not freely available. It's got an option associated with, excuse me if I get the technicalities wrong because I'm not a planner, but there's some options owned by a development company, and they have offered to support us in expanding the car park if they develop the neighbouring site to us. Am I making sense?
Yes, thank you. And you freed up, I noticed that you have freed up some of the car parking for staff. You've now put that down the end.
Yes.
Yes. So that frees up some spaces, does it?
Yes, I think we're absolutely maximising the car parking space within the existing boundary, and we hope by working with Bloor Homes, who have got the option on the land next to us for development if it goes ahead. They've agreed to work with us to expand our car park by at least 30 spaces, but hope potentially even more.
Yeah, thank you. And the other issue you had, Mr. Philpotts from the Community Land Trust, is concerned about traffic and children crossing over, possibly to the play areas or the skate parks or whatever. I don't know where your jurisdiction ends, but is there anything you think you can do at the practice to remind people to be careful of people crossing over from the Community Land Trust houses?
I mean, I wouldn't want to pretend I know about road safety and the best way of dealing with that, because that's certainly not my area of expertise. I think whether we build this extension or not, the traffic, people will come because the patients are going to need healthcare, whether we have extra space or not. So I think that there's always an issue around roads and traffic and safety, and I'm not going to tell you I know the answer to road safety, because, as I say, I wouldn't want to comment on something I don't know a lot about.
I flag it up because it has been, if you read through the letters, it is a matter of concern, and perhaps it's something which could be done on a joint effort with the community centre. So as you approach the three sort of structures, you are made aware that people might be crossing the road, and then as you leave your doctor's surgery, then people could be reminded that there are children crossing.
I mean, signage is always sensible, isn't it? But I would, as I said, I wouldn't want to say what I think that signage should be, because I don't know what would be the most effective.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Vice Chair, any more questions for our doctor representatives?
No questions indicated, Chair, thank you.
No. So, gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for coming along today. If you could just turn your microphones and your cameras off, that would be great.
Thank you very much.
And if you're not too busy, do stay with us for the rest of the application. Okay, so we're now on to the questions from councillors, and page 186 and 187, the first two chapters, Principle of Development and Design and Layout. Any questions?
No questions, Chair.
So could we go on then to the impact on the character of the area and impact upon neighbouring amenities?
No questions, Chair.
I had a question on the impact of the character of the area. The last sentence of the first paragraph, it said will benefit the local community by offering greater employment opportunities. Curtis, can you expand on that?
So I don't believe it's a necessarily direct proposition to create additional employment directly result or being conditioned as part of the application itself. It's more of an understanding that if we are providing this additional facilities within the site, there would be a understanding that there'll be a more intensive use of the site and therefore potentially more employment as a result.
Okay, thank you. Still no questions for these two impacts, Vice Chair?
No questions, Chair.
So we move on then to page 188, highways and parking. We've discussed that a little bit already, and other matters, conclusion and the conditions, and anything else informative or anything else that you wish to raise?
No questions indicated, Chair.
Okay, so we move on then to debate.
Councillor Pearson for debate, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I want to add my support to this proposal. I think the extension fits very well into the existing building. It takes surprisingly little room considering what's been able to modify within the building. Increasing number of treatment rooms by 12 is really highly commendable. Well done, crushing in. I hope your rooms are big enough to do the job, which I'm sure they are. The other issue is that I think Councillor Cutler quite correctly said it. This is a growing catchment area, even without considering Wellbourne. I know there's a number of people from the southern part of my village come down to Wickham, and of course you've got a number of the villages in the Mearn Valley. Even though the Wickham surgery does have an outlier in Droxford, I hope it's still there because I know you have problems with broadband in that area. And within that catchment area, without considering Wellbourne, there is a growth of houses, not in Bishop's Waltham, Swanmore, but of course Wickham itself, Waltham Chase. Those housing numbers are increasing, and that space is needed. Because I know the Bishop's Waltham surgery is packed to capacity. They've been looking for another site for quite some time. They don't have it. So I very much would argue that we really do need this development to keep on providing the prime healthcare that Wickham is becoming important and famous for. Political points, I think it's one of the development of this size surgery is one of the few good things the Blair government came out with. Well done to you.
Thank you. Vice Chair, any more contributions?
Councillor Clear.
Councillor Clear.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I feel the addition of extra consulting rooms must surely help greatly in maintaining the high quality service that you already receive at the surgery, but not only to Wickham, but to several, as we've already heard, surrounding villages, and it must improve the facilities available, as I said, at the surgery. Of course, we're going to have more houses for Wickham, possibly Knowle and surrounding areas, and it's more than likely, I'm sure it's definite, that this will result in more pressure on the surgery. We've also heard the surgery is next to capacity, and I really feel that this proposal will be greatly beneficial to Wickham, surrounding villages and to all, and I thoroughly support this application.
Thank you. Vice Chair, any more contributions?
Councillor McLean, Chair, thank you.
Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chairman. Having had, I could say the need to use Wickham surgery for work that was allocated from Winchester Hospital, and how well and how professionally it was all managed, I think Wickham.
Oh, I've missed the end of what you said.
Really...
Sorry, I missed the end. You said, I think that Wickham, and then I lost it. Do you want to just add what you said?
Which bit? I fully support it. I ended up saying. Did you get the bit about it? The elected? Yes, right.
Just didn't quite catch the end, Councillor McLean.
That's
Councillor Rutter, any more contributions?
I think Councillor McLean was supporting the application, Chair. There are no further indications for debate. Thank you.
Right, I would like to speak. And I have looked at the material planning considerations. I've got a list of them here. It is outside the settlement boundary, but that we knew that when permission was given to the main building, and the dental surgery didn't even come to committee. And it is a modest extension. The design and layout look acceptable. There are no overlooking windows, so there'll be no neighbours bothered by overlooking, and it's far enough from neighbours not to interrupt them with any noise. I don't think it's going to change the character of the area. We have the doctor's assurance that they have asked the community, or the CHG, I never know what that stands for, not to look after Wellbourne. We have the assurance of Fareham Borough Council that they want Wellbourne to be a sustainable, independent settlement. We have the developer, Buckland, who has actually left a space for a medical facility, and we have Fairham Society who've also objected, who said they want a Wellborn to be independent. I think the trouble has been, and where the sort of angst has arisen, is that the mark of duty of care used to go down to the M27, so it does for the minute, but of course then there weren't any houses there, and I'm sure that the doctor's statement that they are not going to look after the bulk of Wellborn is true. They have put a request in. The parking has been a concern as well, but we hear that there is a modest increase, and there might be the opportunity to buy additional land depending on how future applications go. I do understand the concerns over traffic. There are no public transport facilities up there. There's a very good community care system who I always see when I go up there, taking patients up there. And if the community centre and the doctors could get together and have some sort of signage up to say, please drive slowly, there are people crossing, children crossing, but I've never seen anybody drive fast up there because it's a little bend in the road. So having considered all these material planning conditions, and the fact that the surgery is at capacity and it looks after not only Wickham but Shedfield, Sherwood-Heath, Swanmore, Dropsford, Borehunt, Southwark, and all those people will probably approach it from a different way, but they will all end up, of course, going up that small road in the middle. But I can't see a material planning reason to object to it, and I do actually support the application as well. So that's it from me. If there are no more contributions, then we will move to the vote. Vice Chair, any more debate? No.
No more debate, Chair.
No, thank you. So this application has been recommended for approval. The conditions start on page 189 and go on to 190, and there are some formatives, 190 and 191. And so Dave will, as usual, do the roll call of how members want to vote.
Chairman, Julie Pinnock here. I just wondered, one of your questions was about some sort of signage, wasn't it, on the entrance? And I wondered if you were looking for an informative or something.
Yes, I mean, that would be good, but I think the problem is I don't know where the doctor's jurisdiction starts. They have the access, they have the right to access over that road. But yes, an informative with the committee's approval.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just didn't want to miss that opportunity. I appreciate about ownerships, and it would only be an informative.
Yeah.
But I thought that might help in terms of the highway safety and the parking matters.
Yeah. Great. Great. Thank you for thinking of that. That's a good idea. So, Dave, over to you if you do the roll call.
Yes, thank you again. Councillor Clear.
4.
Councillor Evans.
4.
Councillor Gordon-Smith.
4.
Councillor Laming.
4.
Councillor McLean.
Very much 4.
Councillor Raffel.
4.
Councillor Rutter.
4.
And Councillor Pearson.
4.
All 8 members in favour, Chair.
So that's unanimous. So that application is approved. Thank you very much. And we have one last application, which is a renewal of a TPO. I'm just trying to get to the right page.
217, Chair.
Thank you. Oh dear. Sorry about this delay. Right, got it, 217, thank you. So this is the confirmation of TPO 2279 at 61 Tower Street. And Ivan Girdler is the contact officer. Is he speaking to it today?
Chairman, yes, he is. Ivan's just coming into the room now, so if you just give us half a minute to change over to get the next slide up, Chair.
We have one public an objector, Sarah Strangeway. Just wait for Ivan to put his presentation up. Apologies for the delay, we probably went slightly ahead of ourselves there. So that Ivan wasn't really thinking that we would be that fast. Okay, so we have the presentation on screen. And good afternoon, Mr. Girdler.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Good afternoon, councillors. Here today for consider the confirmation of TPO 2279 at 61 Tower Street, Winchester. Now, there's the history of this TPO is that there was one letter of objection to the tree, to the TPO of the tree. So we received a letter, and that's why we're here today, because the objection has not been withdrawn. The council received a 211 notification that the tree was intended for removal. We did a tempo assessment on the tree, and it was deemed worthy of protection. The TPO was made on the 1st of June this year and will expire shortly if it's not confirmed today. The summary of the objections are from the objector are that the front garden is dominated by the tree roots are causing damage by lifting the pavement slabs. Adjoining neighbouring property have previously removed a similar sized tree, and other properties have clear front gardens. Also, the tree is not native. Next one. You can see there, does this thing? The blue dot, I can't, yeah. Oh, here we go. Yeah, there's the blue dot. That's the tree in the front garden there. You can see to the left here, this is, well, this thing's not working. Tower Street, Ashburton Court is the multi-storey car park off of Tower Street there. And then the road goes around and joins into Drury Street to your right hand side there. So the tree is right on the frontage on the road. Moving on to the next slide. This, you can see the tree there, liquid amber, is now going into its autumn colours, which is bright red in the autumn and goes through to yellow, and the leaves drop off. You can see there the tree is right on the front. It's got the full amenity value. It fits into the recommendations by the Secretary of State for its amenity value. Its high amenity, say the tempo assessment gave it a high score, which definitely merits the TPO. Next one. Again, this is another close-up picture. You can see the tree there. You can also see under the tree, that's the hedging, the boundary to the garden, the enclosed garden. So, okay, that's just going through down onto Drury Street if you followed the road round to the back of the Theatre Royal there. This is a picture of the side of the garden. This was taken this week. The leaves are now dropped off, but it's to show you the garden. You can see by the seating area where the slabs were. The shrubs are in the garden, the enclosed garden, so it's all enclosed there, and there's the tree, it's the same in the middle there. Again, this is the view from the road. That, you know, you can see as you walk down the road, you've got a clear view of, again, behind the hedge there, it sticks up, so it has, so got lots of amenity value, and it is right visible from the highway. So the government guidelines in relation to this tree is that actually there's been no reasons given to fell the tree. There's no history there of branch failure or there, and because of the amenity value of the tree, it's the Secretary of State's view, as we know, is the higher the amenity value of the tree or woodland, and the greater any negative impact of the proposed works would have on the amenity, the stronger reasons are needed before consent is granted. So therefore, you know, there's been none of that been given. So therefore, the tree is high immunity. It is valuable. It's a significant tree. It's a good specimen of the species, so it fits into the guidelines for the Secretary of State, and also under the tempo assessment of the tree is under immediate threat from felling. So the two main triggers are there, the immunity value and the threat is there. So the recommendation today is to confirm the TPO. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you very much, Ivan. We have one public speaker and objector, Sarah Strangeway. Good afternoon, Ms. Strangeway.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect.
Can't see you. Do you want to put your camera on or not?
I can try, but I'm going to read off my screen. So bear with me. Let me just try and get myself. I'll make myself visible to you. Hold on. There we go.
It's up to you. You don't have to have it.
Fine. Okay. So
when you're ready.
Fine. We applied for planning consent to remove this tree back in March when we moved into the property. I rang for advice and I called in a local tree firm to assist with the application and to advise on a more appropriate tree for the space. What we wanted to do, this tree encroaches the whole small garden, and it is our only garden. We don't have a back garden. This is our only space. And what we wanted to do was look at taking this tree out and putting something smaller in the corner that would still have value. We didn't get any response from the council team, and despite calls, had no callback at all. So the application was put in, and after 6 weeks of the notice being with the council, a time set by themselves as the cut-off, and thereby automatically giving us and confirming consent, we arranged to have the tree removed and hired a landscape gardener to create our garden plan. I delayed the work for a few more weeks because of we were at the back end by this stage of lockdown coming into June, and I have 3 children, and a member of our family was in an induced coma, so we actually were in quite significant protection at that point. So we wanted to keep to the guidelines. So we arranged for the tree surgeon to arrive on the 2nd of June. And rather bizarrely, the letter arrived from the council that day, which was some 7 weeks after the acceptance date. So we'd actually had the application in for that point, but for 12 and a half weeks. And this, we received a letter that morning applying a temporary TPO. So rather than ignore the letter, I did ring the tree felling company and say that this had come through, despite it being 7 weeks late. We then rang the council to try and understand why, and I wrote a letter of complaint that this had happened and nobody had contacted me. So we had 7 meetings booked with Lloyd, who was the previous planning chap, to come and look at the tree and to discuss what his suggestion was with it, and all 7 occasions weren't met with a visit. I was just left waiting. The garden, basically, so that's sort of the grumble in the background, but the garden is a very small garden, and this tree, as you'll have seen, sits central in the space. It hasn't been cared for, sadly, and it has been left to grow, and it is taller than our house, which is 5 stories high, and the roots have grown so high that they've pulled all the paving up, so the paving's had to be removed, and now it's starting to impact the pathway to the front door, so the paving slabs are starting to raise there, and in actual fact the roots are 12-inch above the ground level. What we wanted to do was remove this tree, and it is a pretty tree, don't get me wrong, but it's very ugly in winter because despite what the council have just said, the councillors just said about branches, we actually lost 4 or 5 branches last week that he could have seen in the garden space that had been put to one side with the high winds. The tree, when the winds blow, actually hits the window. It's that close to the building. So my kitchen and living room and part of my first floor bedroom are completely shadowed by the tree. We have no daylight, so at the moment you'll see, although it's dark outside, that we need lights on to compensate. The house is on a row
of 5 townhouses that have had trees removed in the past, and next door has a similar size.
Thank you very much, Mrs.
Oh,
Tracy. You've had your 5 minutes.
I've talked over.
I think we've understood.
Sorry. Yeah.
We won't go into why it took so long for you to get a response from the council today, but I can assure you that we will be looking at that and seeing the reason for that. So if you could, any questions? Sorry, first of all, any questions for Mrs. Strangeway?
I have a question, Chair, if I may.
Loretta.
Hello, Mrs. Strangeway. Can I just ask how long you've lived there? Was the tree already in, and what sort of size was it when you bought the house?
No, we moved to the house earlier in the year, right at the beginning of the year, and we had already asked a few times about the tree before we purchased the house, and when we'd spoken to Lloyd, the chap on the planning committee or whatever it is, when we spoke to him, he said, oh, there's precedent set because the neighbours have already had theirs taken down. I don't see an issue. And then we heard nothing more from him, so it was a little bit strange that this suddenly happened.
Okay, I understand. Thank you very much.
Okay, no problem.
Any more questions? Ivan, back to you then. Would you like to make any comments on Mrs. Strangeway's presentation?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, there are scope to do some pruning to the tree. As you see in my report, I've put a few suggestions. The tree could be pruned back to get some light underneath and cut back off the building, and also the hedging around the garden could be reduced to induce more light into the garden. You also see I've made some suggestions about the routing around. There are several engineering products that are available for putting over tree roots and for this type of thing. So it's not impossible to get round. There are solutions to solve light issues and root issues, and still be able to retain the tree in its important location.
Thank you.
Am I allowed to respond to that a little bit? No. Okay.
What Mr. Girdler was saying was that there would be ways of, and it's in the report, if you can see that you could put an application in. Just because if it does have a tree preservation order on it, doesn't mean you can't do anything to it. So you could possibly do some crown lifting, and then Mr. Girdler was suggesting letting more light into your garden by removing or cutting back some of the hedging.
The hedging has no impact on the daylight. The hedging is the same height as the houses across the road, so it is just the height of the house, the tree. I'm sorry.
So we've got to the point now of members asking questions from Ivan.
Yes, Chair, perhaps Mrs. Strangeway could switch off her microphone now. That would help with. Thank you. Yes, we have 2 questions for Mr. Girdler. We have Councillor McLean and Councillor Pearson. Thank you. And Councillor Clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Ivan, nice to see you looking so well.
Very much.
We hear from Mrs. Strangeway that the neighbours' trees have been removed, which is my first question. Did they do that with planning consent, and therefore has not a precedent been set? Second question, that you say the tree is not a native breed.
Yeah.
Could because we've seen it obviously happens around and about, if a tree is removed, something is put back that is a native breed to replace it that would be somewhat smaller.
Yes.
And you've covered my third question was going to be management of the tree, which you've already covered. So if you could do the first 2, that'd be great.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I've forgotten the first question.
It's rare you get praise, isn't it? The neighbours' trees being removed.
That's right. Yeah, I did research through the plan applications, and I could only find one application for removal of one dead. It was quite an ugly looking tree that had died off, so I could only find one application for a tree there that had been removed previously. So that that's all I could find. But yeah, that was a lime tree and not a liquid amber. So, you know, that is all I could find on the system. The other thing is, you talked about the tree native. At the end of the day, we're looking for a diverse stock of trees and age. So if we get a disease come in the country, that we do have different species of trees that resist different diseases, so we keep a stock. So if we had all native trees or non-native trees, and somebody coming at all the trees, we have nothing left. So with a diverse stock of age and species, that we stand a better chance of keeping the tree cover in the area. And it would take another 20, 30 years to replace the size of that tree or what it is now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Pearson, did you want to speak?
Yes, please, Chairman. Ivan, a couple of questions. I understand what you say about preferring the tree. It is a beautiful tree, as you quite rightly said.
Yeah.
But how close to maturity is that tree now? If it's already impacting on the house and on the paving around its roots, if it's short of maturity, this work is going to get worse, surely.
Well, it's impossible to say that because the limited root space it has. So the garden will restrict the growth of the tree. And you can't really predict on the actual what's going to happen in the future. But because it's in a smaller area, the tree cannot, you know, develop to its full potential. But not forgetting that it can be pruned and it can be kept contained in its space where it is.
Well, your answer then ironically leads me to the next question. If it's a restricted space, the tree is likely to be under stress. And looking at the branches now, I mean, it suggests that. I don't know whether you agree. I mean, the third question, which I'll answer very quickly now, is why did it take so long for this tree to be TPO'd? It was only TPO'd during the summer. Ironically, at the time the planning application went in to cut it down. Why the delay?
Well, there was the lockdown for a start, and we've had we have 40% extra applications we normally have, so we have a massive workload. But also with Lloyd leaving, you know, things are taking longer than they should do, and also with the restrictions, we can't just wander around like we used to. So we have to be more careful what we're doing. But also bearing in mind that although there's a 6 weeks deadline, the council can TPO trees at any time it wishes it feels to do so. It doesn't have to wait the whole 6 weeks. It could TPO the tree before the end of the 6 weeks or after the 6 weeks, as long as the tree fits into the criteria set down by the Secretary of State, which was the community value and the threat. So it can be done at any time. Okay,
well, the other question is stress and signs of stress on this. If it's impacting the pavement, this tree quite clearly is under quite a lot of stress.
No, the tree is not showing any signs of stress. It looked quite healthy to me when I looked at it. You know, it's doing very well where it is. You know, there's no the branches that have fallen off as minor wood. When we talk about, you know, before that there's no reports of major branch failure, we're talking about things like included bark. We're talking about weak forks. You know, small. You're always going to get debris coming off a tree, small or large. You know, so the tree is not showing any signs of stress. It has been pruned once before, and it has reacted really well. There's lots of good reaction growth in the tree. So to me, I would not say the tree is under stress at all.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks very much, Ivan. That's very useful.
Thank you, Councillor Clear.
Just a quick one, Ivan. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Lovely specimen of a tree.
Yeah.
But you must admit it's pretty big, and it appears to be very close to the property. So just let me ask, you're saying you have no objection then to it being pruned back in several places if it, you know.
Yeah, there is scope to prune it back off the building without, if it's done properly, professionally, the tree could be cut back off the building, it could be crown lifted, and you could still retain the tree where it is. You know, it'd still keep its shape, and you know, it would come to a balance of the tree in the area.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair, any more?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Gordon-Smith has a question. Thank you.
Councillor Gordon.
Well, I wanted to ask Ivan about the precedence of the adjacent trees, but he's already answered that one was ill, and he doesn't. One was damaged and dead, and he doesn't know the reasons for the other ones. So I think I thank him for his answer. Okay, bye.
So
No further questions, Chair.
In debate.
I have debate if whilst everybody else puts their minds together. Thank you, Chair. I hate to say this, and I normally support TPOs without question, but in this case, I'm afraid I have to side with the objector. This is a beautiful tree, but it's completely in the wrong place. It's an impossible situation for this family, 3 children, and no amenity space whatsoever, because it's completely taken up by this tree, which is beautiful, but completely in the wrong place. So I'm afraid, you have to. There comes a point where you say, well, that tree should never have been planted in that position, and even with all the crown lifting and pruning in the world, it's still going to take up most of that space. And the take away the light from the rooms. I mean, those rooms don't have huge windows at the start of things, and if they're covered by the tree. So I'm afraid I can't support this TPO. I think we should let them take it down and put something much more appropriate in place. I don't know whether we can condition the replacement of the tree or another tree planted within the space, perhaps in a corner or something that's more appropriate, but that's my view. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any more contributions to debate?
Yes, Chair, we have Councillor Pearson and Councillor Gordon-Smith.
Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Rudd has virtually said what I was going to say. I not normally go against TPOs because to me one of the most beautiful plants is a tree. But in an urban environment, that tree has got to be in the right place. Now, when it was first planted, quite clearly it was in the right place, and it suited size and things. But now it's virtually reached maturity, and the environmental impacts. I think really we've got to accept that it's turned out as it's turned out. It is wrong for this situation. There are other decorative trees that could be put in that location, as the applicant, Mrs. Strange has put forward, that is closer to the garden. Closer to the garden boundary, which would also be an amenity situation. I mean, the irony is, if this applicant had gone ahead and had the thing cut down before we responded and before we put a TP on it, we would have had our hands tied. And I really do. I don't like saying this, but this mature tree is wrong for this site. A smaller tree, close to the boundary, less environmental impact as far as damage and shade in the house would be much, much more appropriate.
Councillor Gordon-Smith.
Well, I must admit, as a landscape architect, I take a rather different view. There are 2 points. One is it makes a great contribution to the street scene there in a street where there aren't very many other trees. And also I thought maybe it's a case of caveat emptor. If you buy a house next door to a smelting plant and start to complain about the noise, it's rather foolish. It's fairly obvious that there would be a problem, and therefore I'm all for retaining this tree.
Thank you. And I agree with Councillor Gordon-Smith. This has got a total score 14.8, page 221 of 19 points. So it's a tree of merit. We can see it's a tree of merit. I'm awfully sorry, but the Strangeway family bought the house fairly recently, and with the tree, it is a beautiful tree, and I can't support taking it down at this point. I would rather that the objector went down the route of crown lifting and bringing more light into the front garden, as Mr. Girdler suggested, but I can't at this moment support its removal. Any more contributions?
Yes, Councillor Clear, Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, but I agree with Councillor Gordon-Smith and your good self, so I won't take up any more of the time. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that's it, and we have moved to the decision. The recommendation is that the tree preservation order 2279 be confirmed. So Dave will take us through the roll call as to whether you agree with that or you don't agree with that. And then if we don't agree with that, then we'll have probably further conversation. Dave?
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Clear.
Agreed.
Councillor Evans.
Agreed.
Councillor Gordon-Smith.
Yes, I agree.
Councillor Laming.
Agree.
Councillor McLean.
Agree.
Councillor Raphael.
Agree.
Councillor Rutter.
Against.
And Councillor Pearson. Councillor Pearson.
Sorry, I did speak. I didn't realise I'd mentioned myself. Against.
Yeah.
Thank you. So 6 in favour, 2 against.
So that tree preservation order is confirmed. And that includes the business items for today. Thank you very much.